Ignorance and knowledge we equate pretty much the same way as we do darkness and light. That is, when we look at the two extremes, we typically shun the darkness. We want to put it down. We want to negate it. We do the same thing when it comes to ignorance. Without realizing, darkness and light are simply two ends of the same pole. Too often, we equate ignorance with negativity. It's a put down, like saying, "You're stupid." But the first steps toward knowledge and wisdom have to come from that state of ignorance. It is unnecessary to put such awful connotation upon the beginning place of where we must start in order to arrive at knowledge. Acknowledging one's ignorance is actually most desirable, as you realize in that particular area where you don't know, you are an open cup, just waiting to be filled. We do not chastise a child for their ignorance of the wider world when they are so young. If anything, we cherish them more, for with such lack of knowledge and wisdom, there is innocence. That is, ignorance, a true lack of knowledge, is naturally wedded to innocence simply because it means lack of knowledge, which you are plenty capable of changing, of growing into knowledge. The put down of ignorance really speaks more to a notion of stupidity, which is a conceptualization that no matter how hard you try, the knowledge will never be learned, as if there were a mental block that doesn't allow for learning. But honestly, for nearly all of us, that really is not the case for us within. Ignorance is not something to feel bad about. It's not something to chastise yourself about, as you must have a base starting point from which to learn and grow. Contrast that with someone who thinks they already know it all. Their belief in their own lack of ignorance can actually stunt their growth. They do not mature into wisdom because they are not open to any further education. So, someone who embraces their own ignorance and honors it, and uses it as a stepping stone into knowledge and wisdom, standing next to someone who thinks they already know it all, who's really going to grow and expand themselves consciously and spiritually from that pair? Like light and darkness, ignorance and knowledge are two ends of the same pole. In other words, they go together. One cannot exist without the other. Darkness cannot exist without its corresponding contrast to light, and light cannot be known without its corresponding contrast to darkness. So, if you're going to shun the darkness, you might as well shun the light, because they go together. In exactly the same way, ignorance is one end of a pole with knowledge and wisdom at the other. Therefore, you can't shun ignorance without also negating knowledge and wisdom at the same time. This is why in honoring the two, you cannot help but be humble. So, a few questions. Do you often feel like you're having to run away from yourself from those areas of your experience that you feel ignorant in? Do you shun yourself or put yourself down because of those areas in which you tell yourself you are ignorant in? If so, you are doing that because those areas are a source of darkness, and you are simply shunning yourself in the same way you have conceptualized shunning darkness over light. You can't do that. You only make a mess of yourself. You have to embrace and accept the ignorance and darkness within, as that is the very starting point. The only time darkness and ignorance could be considered bad or negative is when we hold on to them in such a way as to never accept and expand on the potential for transformation and growth such lack truthfully offers. This is typically where the ego comes in, where you hold certain thoughts and conceptions of yourself which get in the way. It is not a bad thing in not knowing, for it is the very foundation to begin the trek to wisdom. Love yourself for your potential of growth, which must start from those blind spots. It's okay to acknowledge your own ignorance, not as a badge of shame, but rather the platform for learning to fly.